June 16, 2026. Tuesday afternoon, Tehran. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi walked into a room full of foreign ambassadors, chargé d'affaires, and diplomatic heads of mission from countries around the world. And he said something that every one of those diplomats understood immediately, even if most of Western media buried it under the headline about Friday's signing ceremony. He said this. He said, any military attack by Israel against Lebanon from this point forward, as well as any continued occupation of Lebanese territory, will be regarded by us as a violation of the Memorandum of Understanding. And then he said this, the war's end is not complete without the Israeli forces' withdrawal from the territories they occupied in this war. And then he said something that should be headline news in every city on the planet right now. He said, in our view, the two parties to this memorandum are the US and Israel on one side, and Iran and Hezbollah on the other. Okay, stop. Think about what just happened. The Iranian foreign minister, in an official diplomatic briefing in front of representatives of dozens of sovereign nations, just told the world that in Iran's legal interpretation of this document, Israel is a signatory, which means every Israeli airstrike in southern Lebanon that occurred after Monday, and there have been strikes, is, in Iran's official declared position, a violation of the MOU that has not yet even been signed. The signing is in 48 hours. The document has already been declared violated by the country that is about to sign it. Benjamin Netanyahu responded the same day. His exact words, we will remain in the security belt as long as it takes to protect our country. Israel's national security minister, Itamar Ben-Gvir, was even blunter. He said, and I want you to read this carefully, Trump's agreement does not bind us. Israel's defense minister, Israel Katz, confirmed. IDF stays in Lebanon. A U.S. official, speaking anonymously to PBS News on June 16th, said the opposite of everything Araghchi said. The deal did not call for an Israeli withdrawal. J.D. Vance went on CBS Mornings and called the entire framework, the framework Trump has been announcing as his greatest diplomatic achievement. 48 hours before the signing ceremony, 5 days before the 60-day nuclear negotiation clock begins. The deal has been called fragile by America's own vice president. The deal has been declared already violated by Iran's foreign minister. And the country whose withdrawal Iran says is required to honor the deal has publicly told the world that Trump's agreement does not bind them. Today, I want to spend the next 20 minutes showing you the exact mechanism by which this 48-hour window is the most dangerous moment in the entire diplomatic process. Not because the deal is likely to collapse, because the mechanism that could collapse, it was deliberately built into the document by Tehran. And what is happening right now today is the first live test of whether that mechanism has real teeth or is political theater. And the answer to that question will determine not just the fate of this agreement, it will determine the structure of every major power negotiation Iran enters for the next generation. Okay, let's go. The framework I need you to understand today, I call the interpretive sovereignty doctrine. And here's what it means. When a weaker state enters a complex multilateral agreement involving a third party, in this case, the United States entering an agreement where Israel is not a signatory, but whose behavior is central to implementation. The weaker state's most powerful instrument is not its military. It is its interpretive authority over what the document means. If Iran can establish the precedent that its reading of the MOU is the authoritative reading, then Iran does not need to win a military confrontation to change the terms of the agreement. It only needs to have its interpretation accepted by enough international actors that the American interpretation becomes contested. And look at what Arakci did in that room on June 16th. He did not make a threat. He made a legal declaration. He was not talking to Washington. He was talking to 40+ ambassadors from countries around the world, creating an international audience for Iran's reading of the document, establishing it as the position of record before the signing even occurs. This is not improvisation. This is the interpretive sovereignty doctrine being executed in real time. 48 hours before the pen touches the paper. Now let me give you the granular data, because theory without data is just storytelling. Source number 1, IRNA, the Islamic Republic News Agency, Iran's official state news service, Tehran, June 16, 2026. This is the primary source for Arakci's full statement. IRNA is not an opposition publication. It is the official Iranian government communications channel. When a foreign minister makes a formal legal declaration to foreign ambassadors, and IRNA carries it as the official record, it carries the same legal weight as a diplomatic note. Arakci stated explicitly, and I want to read the exact language one more time. The war's end also includes the end of the occupation. The war's end is not complete without the Israeli forces' withdrawal from the territories they occupied in this war. He described Lebanon as inseparable from the Iran-US peace MOU. He said the end of the war on all fronts, including Lebanon, is perhaps the most important issue in the MOU. That is Iran's foreign minister characterizing Lebanese withdrawal as the most important issue in the agreement. 2 days before signing, after months of negotiation, this is not a late-stage demand. This is the central demand being asserted publicly for the first time with explicit legal framing on the record before a diplomatic audience. Source number 2, PBS NewsHour, June 16, 2026, citing an anonymous U.S. official with direct knowledge of the agreement. Their exact quote, "The deal did not call for an Israeli withdrawal." Compare that sentence to Arakci's sentence. The war's end is not complete without the Israeli forces' withdrawal. These two sentences describe the same document. One is from the Iranian foreign minister. One is from an anonymous American official. They are direct contradictions of each other regarding what the document says. And the document has not been publicly released. Trump confirmed at the G7 in Evian-les-Bains that the text would be released pretty soon, but sometime after Friday, after the signing, which means the world is being asked to accept an agreement whose central interpretive dispute will not be resolvable by the public until after the document is already in legal force. Think about this carefully. Iran is establishing its interpretation of the agreement in front of international witnesses before the text is public. By the time the text is released, Iran's interpretation will already be the internationally documented position. That is not a coincidence. That is a sequencing strategy. Source number 3, CBS News, live updates, June 16th, 2026, reporting on two parallel events that happened simultaneously. Event 1, Arakci's declaration that Lebanon occupation violates the MOU. Event 2, Israeli strikes continuing in Lebanon, including attacks described by CBS as hitting several commercial and residential areas in Beirut without warning in what CBS called one of the deadliest days in the latest Israel-Hezbollah war. At least 112 people killed, hundreds wounded, while Arakci was briefing ambassadors that any Israeli attack constitutes a MOU violation. While those attacks were already ongoing, the two events were not sequential. They were simultaneous. Arakci was not warning about hypothetical future attacks. He was formally documenting existing ongoing attacks as MOU violations in front of an international audience while those attacks were happening. Does that make sense? Source number 4, AP reporting on the April ceasefire precedent, which is the single most important data point for understanding what Iran is prepared to do if its Lebanon interpretation is rejected. In early April 2026, during the first ceasefire attempt, Israel intensified its attacks on Hezbollah in Lebanon. Iran's response was to close the Strait of Hormuz, not escalate militarily, close the strait. The White House called it completely unacceptable. The strait closure threatened the entire ceasefire framework. Then AP reporting noted that J.D. Vance described even that ceasefire as fragile before it nearly collapsed. Iran demonstrated in April that it has a specific and precise playbook for responding to Lebanon violations, strait closure. The cost of that tool is estimated at $3 billion per day to global trade at peak disruption. The question that no one in Western media is asking right now is this: if Iran formally declares the MOU violated before Friday's signing, what does the April playbook tell us about what comes next? Source number 5, Washington Times, June 16, 2026, reporting Araghchi's full statement in detail. The Washington Times confirmed that Araghchi told foreign diplomats Iran had considered a full ceasefire in Lebanon, a prerequisite for ending the war from the beginning. From the beginning, not from June 14th, from February 28th, the day the war started. This is Iran formally stating to an international audience that the Lebanon condition was never a late addition, never a surprise demand, never a negotiating tactic inserted at the last minute. It was the first condition, and Washington signed a document without formally including it. Now, I want to add a dimension that I have not seen any major analysis outlet addressing at the level it deserves. The 48-hour window between the June 16th statement and the June 19th signing is not simply a period of diplomatic turbulence. It is a structured test, and Iran designed it as such. Here is the specific mechanism. Araghchi made his Lebanon declaration to foreign ambassadors on June 16th, not to Washington directly, not through back-channel communication, to the international diplomatic community assembled in Tehran. This means that every ambassador in that room goes home and cables their capital. Every foreign ministry in the world receives a report before Friday. By the time the signing ceremony happens on June 19th in Switzerland, every government in the world will have received Iran's legal interpretation of the document from Iran's own foreign minister before the document text is publicly available. Now ask yourself, what does that mean for the 60-day negotiation period that begins on Friday? It means that 40+ countries have already received Iran's interpretive framework. When those countries look at the MOU text, when it is eventually released, they will evaluate it through the lens of Araghchi's June 16th briefing. Any ambiguity in the text, and given that the US and Iran have contradictory readings of the Lebanon clause, ambiguity clearly exists, will be interpreted by most of the international community through the lens that was established before they saw the document. Iran wins the interpretive battle by moving first. This is not diplomacy, this is legal information warfare, and it is being executed with precision. Now, I want to be completely honest and fair. Here's the Steelman for the American and Israeli position, because I never want you to simply accept what I say. The strongest American argument is this: Iran's Araghchi statement is a performance for domestic and regional audiences, not a legal ultimatum. The MOU is a bilateral document between the United States and Iran. Israel did not sign it. Israel's behavior in Lebanon is governed by separate frameworks, including UN Security Council Resolution 1701, the November 2024 ceasefire agreement, and bilateral US-Israel understandings. Iran cannot retroactively insert Israel as a signatory to a document Israel did not negotiate or sign. Furthermore, if Lebanon was truly Iran's central precondition, Iran's negotiating team had months to formalize that in the document text. They did not. An unsigned condition is not a condition, and the operational reality favors Washington. The strait is opening, markets are recovering, US forces maintain regional dominance, and the economic pressure that brought Iran to the table has not changed. Iran has more to lose from voiding the MOU than from accepting the ambiguity and entering the 60-day talks. That argument is rational. It has genuine force. It is probably the working assumption inside the White House right now. But here's what the American Steelman cannot explain. It cannot explain why Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, who mediated the agreement, who brokered every substantive concession, who has more direct knowledge of what was negotiated than any anonymous American official. Stated publicly on Sunday that the MOU calls for a halt to hostilities on all fronts, including Lebanon. The man who wrote the deal says Lebanon is in it. An anonymous American official says it is not. These two people cannot both be right about the document they both worked on. It cannot explain the April precedent. Iran demonstrated in April that it will close the strait in response to Lebanon violations. The American steelman assumes Iran will not do so again because it has more to lose now. But in April, Iran had just as much to lose. They did it anyway. Because the Lebanon condition is not a tactical bargaining chip. It is Iran's publicly stated non-negotiable for the entire conflict, stated on day one, never withdrawn. And it cannot explain Ben-Gvir's statement. When Israel's national security minister says publicly on June 16th that Trump's agreement does not bind us, he is not just speaking to Israeli domestic audiences. He is telling the Iranian Foreign Ministry in real time that the entity Iran views as co-signatory to the agreement has publicly repudiated it. If Araghchi's legal position is that the two parties are the US and Israel on one side, and Israel's own minister says the agreement does not bind Israel, then Iran has documented grounds for declaring the agreement void before it enters legal force. The steelman assumes Iran is bluffing. The April precedent, Ben-Gvir's statement, and the 18 months of consistent Iranian messaging on Lebanon suggests something more dangerous than a bluff. I want to know what you think about this specific question, whether the 48-hour window closes with the MOU intact, or whether Ben-Gvir's statement gives Iran what it needs to formally delay or void the signing. Leave it in the comments. Now, here are 3 specific things to watch in the next 48 to 72 hours. Watch whether Israel halts or escalates Lebanon strikes before Friday's signing ceremony. This is the clearest possible indicator. If Israeli aircraft conduct strikes on southern Lebanon or Dahieh between now and Friday morning Switzerland time, Araghchi has already announced on the record that Iran considers those strikes a formal MOU violation. The signing would then proceed if it proceeds over Iran's publicly stated objection. That creates a profoundly different legal and diplomatic context for the 60-day talks than a clean signing. Watch the IDF's operational tempo in Lebanon, specifically in the 24 hours before the Swiss ceremony. Military operations do not pause automatically for diplomatic events. If they don't pause, watch whether Iran formally notifies the Swiss mediators of a violation before the signing begins. Watch Pakistan's response to the Araghchi statement. Pakistan's Prime Minister Sharif is the mediating authority for this agreement. He said Lebanon is included. Washington says it is not. Araghchi says Lebanon is inseparable. Pakistan must now either validate Araghchi's interpretation publicly, which would contradict the anonymous American official and create a diplomatic rupture with Washington, or remain publicly silent, which Iran will interpret as tacit acceptance of its position. Watch for any statement from Islamabad in the next 48 hours. Pakistan's language will tell you whose reading of the document the mediating party is prepared to support. Watch what happens to oil futures between now and Friday morning. This is the cleanest market signal. If traders price in a meaningful probability of Iranian strait closure before the signing, you will see Brent crude move above $90 per barrel. If traders price in clean signing with no Lebanon complications, you will see Brent stay below $85 and continue declining. The current trajectory per U.S. officials is approximately 25 ships per day through the strait, with an expectation of 40 to 50 post-signing. If that expectation is disrupted by Araghchi's statement, energy markets will price it in faster than any government announcement. Watch oil futures Thursday evening. They are the most honest real-time referendum on whether this deal survives the 48-hour window. and your homework. I want you to find the full text of Araghchi's June 16th statement as published by IRNA, Iran's official state news agency. Read every paragraph. Then find the anonymous U.S. official statement as reported by PBS NewsHour on the same day. Put those two accounts side by side. They are describing the same document in directly contradictory terms. Then ask yourself one question. When the MOU text is released after Friday, which reading of the Lebanon clause do you expect the actual language to support? Because the answer to that question will determine whether the 60-day nuclear window is a genuine negotiation or a 60-day countdown to the next crisis. I am not asking you to agree with me. I am asking you to look at the same data and ask different questions. The question every network is asking is whether the signing happens on Friday. The question you should be asking is what the signing means if one party has already declared the agreement violated and the other party's most important ally has publicly said the agreement does not bind them.